Hello and welcome back to my channel, and more specifically my project, Living with a Tao Tao. If you haven't already done so, please take a minute to subscribe to my channel and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any updates from me or this project. If you missed the first episode, let me give you a rundown of what's going on here. I bought the most hated scooter on the internet, a Tao Tao 50, which is notorious for its unreliability. And I'm going to see if the unreliability is due to the way the scooter is constructed, or if it has more to do with the kinds of people who buy $750 scooters on Amazon. If you want to know more about the specifics of how I'm setting up this experiment, check out the first video here. Now, before I can put this scooter through the torture test of daily life and make it my main means of transportation, I need to uncrate it, assemble it, and set it up. So let's get started. So it's here. This is how you can expect your new scooter to be delivered. Let me pull the box off and let you see what it looks like. So you can see we have some assembly required here. You know, not too bad. The paint's in decent shape. Bubble wrap kept it safe. Frame's still intact, you know. I think this is all right. So I guess I will take this in and put it together. So this is how you can expect your scooter to arrive when you order it off the internet. It comes in a steel crate and it's held in place with coat hangers and bubble wrap and some other little apparatuses here. And it does a pretty good job actually. So let's get this thing out of the crate. All right, so we got it out of the crate there. I will say, I used to work in a dealership and I used to assemble a lot of scooters out of the crate. And that was one of the worst crates I've dealt with. Usually there's enough room under the bottom of the crate that you can put your jack underneath the scooter and lift the front wheel up and put your front wheel on and then remove the scooter from the crate with the wheels. This was not possible with this crate. I'm not really sure why. So, now we need to continue the assembly of the scooter. We're going to put our front wheel on. We are going to make sure that the brakes are together, the speedo's hooked up. We need to assemble the head unit and make sure that this is securely bolted. This is the number one thing I see wrong with these scooters when customers put them together themselves. They don't get this bolt in correctly, they don't get it tight, and you know, you end up with a real dangerous situation. Looking through it, you know, you definitely see some quality issues. There's like, the paint is running here. I don't know if brake fluid spilled on it and ate all that paint away or what, but there's like something sticky here. The seat was crooked. When I lifted it up, the hinge had been kind of like bent off to one side. Oh, this is a great time to show you what kind of goodies you get when you buy your scooter here. So we have our really nice owner's manual for the Pony 50. I guess this is a Pony 50. I did not get these optional mag wheels. Oh, check this out. I am really gonna have to check that out later. I got a DVD. We have our bag of nuts and screws. that is going to be what holds this whole thing together. We have this really cute 4 lbs battery, a little bit small for this. I usually like a 7 ABS in my Tao Taos, but we'll run what we got. We have our very needed toolkit. I can't imagine what this would be like if you were trying to assemble your scooter and remove it from the crate with these tools. These are like literally stamped out of a flat piece of cold rolled steel. It's like super soft. You got your cutesy little screwdriver. I don't know. But in the instruction manual, there is really nothing about how to take it out of the crate. We have all this stuff about how to use it and your multi-purpose case and how to put it on the center stand and how to ride a motorcycle. All this great stuff, but nothing on torque specs and assembly procedures or even how to get this thing out of the crate. Which is why they recommend that it be assembled by a professional technician. So that might be the first reason why these scooters don't last as long as you think that they might, because they start out of the box being misassembled. Something just occurred to me. I don't want this to be a tutorial on how to put together one of these scooters, because I really do think this should be done by a technician with experience and correct tools. I am going to mention a few things as I go. If you choose to assemble your own scooter, good on you. Go do you. I just know that if I or someone I loved was on the street on one of these and it was down to their safety, I would want the scooter to be assembled by a professional with a lot of experience. All right, so I have my Tao Tao 50 assembled, got the top case on, front wheel. This panel, man, I mean, okay, this is a sidebar. I bought this house taking motorcycles apart and putting them back together. So I'd like to think that I'm pretty good at it. This front panel, I don't think it really goes to this scooter or something. It is extremely difficult to get in place. The shape is like not right and the holes don't line up. So bummer for that. Anyway, so the Tao Tao's assembled. The last thing I need to do is to fill and charge this battery. Now they ship the batteries dry because it's safer. You know, then you don't risk the acid spilling out and getting all over the UPS driver. So the acid comes in these little tubes and basically you just drop it inside the battery. And then you need to charge it. That is so important. Just putting the acid in the battery will give you 12 volts, but the battery will not be ready to go until it is fully charged. So, first step is take the top off. I'm also going to put on some gloves. All right, so I'm going to put on some gloves first. I also have my safety glasses on. It's very important. You definitely do not want battery acid on your skin or your eyes. And crack open this package here. Okay, so here we go. I'm just going to press straight down on it. And let it drain. After this is all done draining, then I'll throw it on the battery charger and get ready to throw it in the scoot. Okay, so my little scooter is is all uncrated and fully assembled, and I got myself a cup of coffee and my PDI checklist. Now, PDI is pre-delivery inspection. This checklist is supposed to be completed by a technician before the scooter is delivered to the customer. And the items on this checklist are things like steering stem feels tight without play, check fluid levels, adjust idle speed, adjust valve clearance, and change engine oil. Now, here's what's interesting about changing the engine oil on your brand new scooter with no miles. I think the reason a lot of these motors don't last is because the customers do not change the engine oil out of the crate. And here's why that's important. When these scooters are shipped from China, the engine is filled with shipping oil. Now, shipping oil is sort of like engine oil, and it is slippery, but its main purpose is to not catch fire. It's not great engine oil. So, before even starting this engine or turning it over, I'm going to drain all of that out and replace it with some high quality oil. Now, I'm going to be using Bel-Ray Mineral 1040. This is a motorcycle grade oil, and it's important to use motorcycle grade oils because these scooters are air cooled, and these have special additives that make them wick heat away more effectively and do things like that. So I'm going to drain the oil, change that. I am also going to change the final drive oil. Now, the final drive doesn't really have shipping oil in it, usually. I mean, who knows what's in this one? But it's not as good quality as this here. This is Bel-Ray Hypoid 8090 Gear Saver. This is another oil I became a really big fan of while working in independent shops and dealerships. And I want to give this scooter the best chance I can. So, without further ado, I think that I'm going to change the oil. All right, I just want to say something real quick. This shipping oil is taking forever to drain. Like, normally the engine is hot when you drain the oil to help it run quicker, but this stuff is super, super thick. This is like 50 weight or something. It's like honey. So I'm really glad I'm draining this out of here. All right, so I got my oil changed, all 700 cc's of it. The Bel-Ray comes in a 1 liter size and it has a little indicator on the side to show you how much it used. So I have about 300 cc's left in this 1 liter bottle. Save that for later, who knows, she might burn oil. Next thing I'm gonna do is tackle the valve adjustment. So let me grab my checklist and my Fisher Space Pen. Check off, change engine oil. Okay, so I'm in the middle of doing the valve adjustment here, the pre-delivery inspection valve adjustment, and wouldn't you know, the valves were not correctly set from the factory. Now, I went to go check my clearances, and the thinnest feeler gauge I have, which is 15 10,000ths, this is less than 2,000ths of an inch, does not fit in my exhaust valve. That means that this thing was not assembled correctly or set up correctly from the factory. And if that's not all, I have also discovered that the spark plug that came with my little gem here is not an NGK CR7 HSA. It is something by TT, and it is called a 5005, which I do not trust, so I will be swapping that out for a CR7 HSA, and I'll be keeping this under the seat just in case of emergencies. All right, so I'm gonna go above and beyond the Call of Duty one more time, and before the first startup of this engine, I'm gonna use my little oiler here to oil the cam and the tappets a little bit, because I don't exactly know how much oil is up there and if it's not high quality stuff. The last thing you want to do to your top end is start it up without oil or with poor quality oil. It'd be hard on the cam, on the followers, on the bearings. So I've got some motorcycle oil in my little oiler here, and I'm just gonna do the tappets. I'm gonna do the bearings. I'm gonna do the cams. I'll do a little on the chain. You know, I wanna give this thing really the best shot it can get. So this is above and beyond Call of Duty, as per the owner's manual and the PDI sheet, but it's just me being honest. And here we go. Woo, almost got her there. All right, so start it up. You can tell the idle is really, really high. I'm gonna hook up my tachometer and adjust the idle speed to the factory recommended specifications. So pause for that. Okay, you can see I've got my DigiSync hooked up here. Now this is a manometer. Technicians use this to synchronize up to 4 carburetors at the same time, so all the carburetors are pulling equally. This DigiSync actually has a built-in tachometer, so that's what I'm going to use. You can kind of set your idle speed by the sound of the engine, and I'll probably release a video on that. But for now, for accuracy's sake, I need to set the idle speed of this scooter. Now the DigiSync is tapped into my vacuum lines over here. I've got it teed in to my Petcock vacuum. And let's get the book spec here. It says idle speed, max load, starting mode, slow speed. Slow speed? I wonder if slow speed means idle speed. It says 1700 RPM plus or minus 100. So I'm gonna say slow speed is idle speed. So let's fire her up again. I don't know if you can see, but we're running about 3,700 RPM. All right, so I got my idle speed sitting around 1750 RPM, just right in the factory specifications. You'll notice the idle did come down quite a bit the more the engine ran, and that's because the auto choke is sort of on a timer. As the auto choke heats up because the engine is running, it pulls the choke off. So the idle is automatically going to be a little high when you first start it up from cold. So I have this set at 1750 RPMs, and I am going to adjust that frequently, I'm sure, as the motor breaks in. I'll try and adjust it at the 200 kilometer first inspection and make sure it's safe to drive. The reason you want to adjust your idle speed frequently is you don't want your rear tire to be turning while you're not giving throttle. Like, that's going to create what we call a creep. You know, like an automatic transmission in a car, when you let your foot off the brake, the car creeps forward, and it's not something you want on your scooter. So we got that set. I'm ready to put her all back together and take it for my first spin around the neighborhood. All right, me and my Space Ben have been making short work of this checklist here. Got everything checked off that needs to be checked off. Everything from checking the charging voltage at 5,000 RPM. I had 13.8 volts DC. To checking the spark plug gap. The plug gap I had to look up in the manual. And lucky I did that too because it didn't have a spark plug I recommend. Tire pressure set correctly at 170 kilopascals in the front, 190 kilopascals in the rear. That translates to about 25 PSI in the front, 27 in the rear. I'm gonna see how that handles. I'm kind of a bigger guy, 6'4", 220 pounds. So, you know, I might need a little more pressure to get my footprint just right. But I even signed it right there at the end with today's date, 6/1/2020. And I think I'm about ready to take it around the block. Now, I did notice something interesting while I was reading through the owner's manual here. It says, if the motorcycle is within 3,000 kilometers, keep the speed below 60 kilometers per hour. So I'm American, so that means nothing to me. Let's just Google that really quick. How many miles is 3,000 kilometers? Oh man, is my odometer in kilometers or in miles? It does not say. I'm gonna assume it's miles, but I won't know until I do a couple laps. I know the lap around my neighborhood is 1 mile, so maybe I'll see if that pegs 1 mile on my odometer. If it doesn't, it's kilometers. Anyway, so before 1,800 miles, I need to keep the speed below 60 kilometers, 37. So that's pretty easy to do. I'm not sure this thing is gonna do much more than 37. But, you know, that's part of the break-in of the engine. And that's another thing that I think really hurts these things. I don't think people really allow them to warm up, for the engine to heat cycle and break in. So before I take this thing around the neighborhood, I'm gonna heat cycle the engine again. That means I'm gonna get it hot, let it sit there and idle, and I'm gonna shut it off and let the temperature drop back down. And that kind of lets the bearings and the piston and piston rings to kind of seat and get grooved together. So I'm gonna clean up all my tools and shop rags, let this thing idle a little bit, and then we'll take her around the neighborhood. I went to hop on my scooter for my first ride. Before getting out on the street, as I always do, check all my lights, make sure I have a tail light and turn signals. Went for a left turn signal, and you can see my rear turn signal flashing just lovely. But I have nothing coming out of the front turn signal. So I grabbed my trusty test light and went to probing and found I have power here, but the outlet on the back side of the socket is actually like loose or damaged or something. So if I pull on the wires just right, she comes on. Oh man, making a liar out of me already. Come on, you dirty dog, what's wrong with you? Oh, there it is. Oh, I see the problem, I see the problem. Here, let me get you in for a closer look. See that? See that connector? The ground side has pulled out of the connector. So, good thing I PDI'd this thing. Let me just plug that back in. Should be easy peasy. All right. Ta-da! All right, we have turn signals again. I'm ready to go for the ride. If something like this happens to you, there is a wiring diagram on the back of the owner's manual, and it shows you, you know, which color wires go where. I know from working on these that orange is left turn signal, light blue is right turn signal, so you just find the orange wire and that's where you go. It is listed here somewhere. No, it is not. Huh. Well, what do you know? This is like the ignition system, but nothing for the lights. So, cool. All right, so here's what I know from my first ride. First of all, the odometer is in kilometers because I know the lap around my neighborhood is 1 mile. And when I got back here, I noticed that I have traveled the increment of 2.2 units. So I left here with 0.5 of a kilometer, came back with 2.2. That is going to be a touch of a pain for converting everything to miles, but it's going to be nice for keeping track of my service intervals. So, good and bad. Next thing, you know what? The transmission is tuned really, really nicely on this bike. You know, out of the box, most transmissions are tuned to really keep the RPMs down low, keep the bike pretty docile. This really winds up pretty nicely. I'm not going to take it apart yet. I'll take it apart when it breaks. But moving right along, it smells really weird. I think it's whatever paint they use on the exhaust. It smells very bad. And I do need to go up in the tire pressure because the tires, I don't know if you can see this if I sit on here, but as I load them with my body weight, they really flex too much. I mean, they smush out pretty well. So I'm gonna bump them up to 30 PSI and see where that takes me. But ultimately, I'm pretty excited. I'm going to finish logging this first trip in the Tao Tao log, and I'm ready to start dailying this beast. So, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. If you want to follow the progress of me and my scooter in daily use, make sure you follow me on Instagram and Twitter. I'm posting using the hashtag #LivingWithATaoTao. So, I'll check back in later, or I'll check back in sooner if something goes wrong. Until next time, I'm living with a Tao Tao.